Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to our Lunch and Learn hosted by Wavelogix. I'm Suzanne Florick, and I'll be your host today. We're really glad you're here today. Today's session introduces you to our new Director of Product Development, Gerry Van Horn, and we are excited to have you meet him. Before we jump in, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes to help you get the most out of the webinar. First, we're recording this session, so don't worry if you miss anything. We'll send out the recording and any slides afterwards. For the best view, we recommend using speaker view, which can be toggled in the top right corner of your Zoom screen. If you've got questions during the session, just pop them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many of them as we can in the Q&A at the end of the webinar. And if you run into any tech issues, drop a note in the chat. Someone from our team is standing by to help. Let's start with a quick intro to Wavelogix and today's speakers. Wavelogix was founded in 2021 in partnership with INDOT and Purdue University. Our goal, help make roads and bridges more reliable and less disruptive to build. Our flagship product is the Rebel Concrete Strength Sensing System. It gives you real-time, in-place concrete strength data without needing maturity curves, and it works across all kinds of projects. That means better accuracy, better scheduling, and real savings. Now let's meet Joe Turek, our president and COO. Joe earned his electrical engineering degree from University of Notre Dame and his MBA from Kellogg School of Northwestern. He's been in manufacturing his entire career, holds 5 patents in microwave telecommunications technology, and is a licensed professional engineer. Basically, he knows how to build things that work. And now our featured guest, Gerry. You can give a wave. He I'm excited to introduce Gerry, who brings over 20 years of experience in technology leadership with a focus on software and firmware development in particular. He got started in the automotive world, spending his time at both Delphi and Allison Transmission, working on some key software initiatives. After that, Gerry spent more than a decade at Landis Gear. Did I say that correctly? Gear?
Yeah, they say Landis and Gear. Yep.
Landis Gear in the electric metering industry, where he eventually led a global team of firmware engineers. For the past couple of years, he's been bringing his technical and leadership expertise to the concrete industry, and today he serves as the Director of Product Development here at Wavelogix. Please help me welcome Gerry.
Great to be
Um,
here.
awesome. We're
Fantastic.
happy to have you here, Gerry. I'm gonna say, Joe, let's dive in and take it away.
Okay, fantastic. Well, it's this is really great to have you, Gerry. It's the first time we're actually interviewing some of our internal folks, which is great. Nothing like having the head of our product development as one of our first interviewees, and this is a lot of fun. You have brought a lot to our product. You're the heart and soul and the brains behind the software that goes into the data logger, and we wanted to make sure that our customers understood that there's real people behind that. It's not AI developed, and and when it doesn't work, you're the guy that we're going to call. But we appreciate the work that you put into this product, and it's really kind of outstanding. So it's kind of fun today. Suzanne put together a nice list of questions. She and I like to call it "Let's Stump the Expert" kind of questions. So we're just going to kind of read through these
Sounds like a
questions.
challenge. Sounds like a
That's
challenge.
right,
Okay.
as a challenge. Yeah. So let's just jump right into that and start with the first question. So can you describe the formula for converting uh, real-time data into compressive strength? No, we're just kidding. No, we're not kidding. You saw that look
You
of
threw me
shock
a
on Jerry's face. He's
curveball
like,
there,
wait a minute, that wasn't on the list.
right?
Let's talk a little bit about technology and the industry trends. In your career, you've worked across the automotive area, the utilities, and now you're in infrastructure. And that includes things like precast concrete and DOT sectors. What kind of parallels do you see within these industries and how they approach the digital transformation and technology adoption?
Okay, yeah, that's a very interesting question. So I see a couple parallels, especially between the utility industry and our current industry. And I would say, in my experience, both of those are quite demanding and good with good reason um, of their suppliers. And why is that? Well, the stakes are pretty big, right? So if you're in the electric metering industry and you do something wrong, right, that's big money, right? You get a bill wrong, electricity is serious, right? Got to take those things seriously, and also in concrete, right? So if we're doing bridges or highways, those getting damaged or not being done properly have some big ramifications. And so where I see some further parallels is that as technology advanced, these industries look to adopt some of those. For example, in the electric metering industry, in the beginning, it was somebody who went out and read the meter. And eventually they're like, what else can we do with this with technology? So they ended up implementing some communication mediums on the products or the meters. And so eventually you could send the data back. Well, if we then look at our industry in the concrete industry, um, with the advent of like the first generation of sensors with temperature sensors that help with maturity, model and maturity curves, that's a trend in gathering data without having to do um, certain, on-site technology, right? You can do it at the back end, you can do it and taking a look at dashboards. And then that's where the Rebel comes in, right? We take it a bit further and we do a superior method of giving you a strength measurement. And we are looking to break free of those cylinder breaks. How can we get rid of that on-site challenging, messier method of determining strength? So I see if you take a look back, you can see how each industry adopted technology and is now taking it further. They're going to second and third generation products. So definitely some parallels there for sure.
Yeah, yeah, great analogies. I mean, you're right. I never thought of it that way, but the automobile has come a long way from the original Model T to now they're self-driving cars, right? With using AI, which is kind of cool. And I'm old enough to remember the guys who used to walk around and read the meters, and now all that is, back and forth control through IoT, which is just really amazing. Uh, Totally accurate. And I love, like, we had a water leak one time, and the water company calls us up and says, we think you have a major leak because you're using a lot more water than you normally do. And
Hmm.
sure enough, they were right. So it is kind of outstanding how I think technology has come along. And in the concrete industry, like you just said, we've been using cylinder breaks for 100 years. And it's exciting now to start to see IoT technology being integrated into it. Maturity sensors have been out there for 15 years, but it doesn't seem like it has really, been adopted tremendously in there. And I'm hoping that with the types of designs that you put into the Rebel, that IoT will really start to be used much more in the technology of the construction industry, and get away from people waiting for someone to make a cylinder, break it, and call them up and tell them if something's good or bad. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, along those same lines, with these emerging technologies, anything that you think has the greatest potential to kind of transform precast and on-site concrete construction in the next couple of years?
Oh, another good question. I like it. Well, I'm going to go from a higher level at first and say some things that we've been talking about just briefly is the IoT domain, right? So how many devices and streaming data can you have on a site, right? I think that's where a lot of the growth area is going to be going forward. Um, it allows you to be able to monitor projects without being there all the time. We've talked to customers how they may deploy or pour a project, but they may be 2 hours, 4 hours from their office, right? So if they have to drive out there every day to take a look, that's a big burden on them. It's costs, right? Paying somebody to do that rather than being at their office and helping develop other projects. So I think, IoT products are really going to have a big growth in this field going forward. Maybe from another, like from more of a fun standpoint, when I look at concrete and learning about the industry and seeing where it's going, I really see RCC and ultra high performance concrete as making some big strides in market share in various products in the field. So I hope that we can serve those customers and those manufacturers with the Rebel sensor going forward. So I
Yeah.
think those are pretty big. And I think also um, helping to serve the precast industry, that's an area I'm really excited about. And if we can help get our sensors in there and help them move formwork, get product out of the initial molds and everything, and allow their equipment to be used for even more pours faster, that's where I really hope Wavelogix can come in and help that industry.
Yeah, great thoughts on that. I'm kind of impressed. We've seen the BIM technology come along where you can start to 3D model your entire structure and look at that through 3D glasses. I'd love to see companies start to take the data that we have, which is kind of like here's a sensor data in a particular spot that tells you the strength, and you're excited when you've hit your certified strength and away you go. But imagine having sensors placed down a road and you consolidate all that information and can actually show that entire road and the strengths that were received from the sensors and look at that and say, we got 4,000 psi here, we got 5,000 here, we got 3,000 here, we got 2,500 here, and look at that across the whole road, and then maybe over time determine if a particular strength decays more or less, and have a way of looking at that. Our sensors do have GPS positioning in them, so you can actually go back and find where those sensors were in the future and map them out. So I think there's a lot of direction that we can take IoT to the next level once, the systems start to get adopted into real-time use.
Yeah, I like what you're thinking there, Joe, especially going back later and analyzing some strengths after the initial project's done. That's such a great suggestion. And I
Yeah.
think there's some areas of growth there that we can brainstorm on and really take advantage of later. I like your
Yeah.
ideas there.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about real world impact. How do you see the real-time concrete strength monitoring impacting decision making in precast manufacturing compared to, let's say, DOT or contractor-led infrastructure projects?
Ooh, another good one. You guys got all sorts of good questions today. Well, so contrasting those two, if we look, I believe you mentioned precast and also DOT projects. From my talking with customers, those can be two very different, um, I guess, requirements is probably what I'd say there. Even though sometimes the precast um, guys and their companies are serving DOT, but when I look at how they go about pouring or developing their concrete projects, from our perspective, it seems like the precast is very, very interested in early strength. How long do they need to keep the concrete molds in place, the infrastructure in place, before they can move them to more of their longer term curing locations?
Yeah.
So we hope that and believe that we can serve that well by giving you very accurate early strength data that can then allow you to move on and do more projects there faster. But with DOT and more of your horizontal pouring project market, early strength can be important, but ultimately they want to get to a final strength. And so that is more important in my experience in talking with some of the customers. Now, granted, I'm sure they want data at all ages, but I think the final strength can reaching that goal is very important there. So we have a little bit of contrasting requirements there, but that just leads us to being enabled to serve all those ages. So I think I answered that question, Joe. Help me
Yeah.
out if I need to touch on a few
No,
other
I
things
think
there.
that's pretty good. It is interesting that, concrete is different in different applications, right? And every type of application has its own desires and, if you will, a value proposition. So I think you highlighted well that precasters are all about opening those molds and moving the product out. They're a manufactured project, a process that's a factory driven, and it's all about speed. Mold it, unmold it, move it out, get the next one in. DOT tends to move a little bit slower horizontal projects, but there are some senses of urgency as well. Bridges are really important.
That's a fair point. Yep.
Get them to move quicker. A lot of times you have post-tensioning work being done on bridges that has to be done at a precise concrete strength. Patchwork is a great example, right? Today, where
Absolutely.
they have anywhere between 2 to 4 hours to get a patch in place and get traffic moving. But yeah, I would say probably the DOTs are most concerned about getting traffic up and running and getting the construction site open. But that usually is going to be in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 days, right? When it's strong enough to start moving trucks down, and different. So yeah, kind of interesting the differences between those. And again, it goes on and on for every type of application. You had mentioned RCC as well, and there's ultra high precision concrete that's coming online. So everyone has a different need. Why don't we jump over
Absolutely.
to product developments? When we're developing products for precast facilities and construction sites, how do you balance the difference between their technical requirements and use cases?
Okay. Well, this one immediately what comes to mind is battery life. So we just
Mhm.
talked about how a precast facility is more interested in early strength, right? So they're probably not going to have our product monitoring strength for 28 days, or if they are, maybe they'll plug it in later and get some data points later. So battery life may not be as important because if they only want to know the first 12, 18 hours like that before they can remove their foam mark, then um, you hold on one second, I apologize. So I think that the importance of battery life there is not critical to them, whereas it might be for some of the other 28-day strength jobs and certifications that we were talking about.
Mhm.
So it's important to consider both. And I think, we've talked about with some customers, we're experimenting with looking at some battery life extenders that we're really excited to get out in the field. So that's going to touch more on the requirements for horizontal construction sites, whereas that's not really going to be a requirement for a precast place. So I just think it's important that as we develop firmware, software, dashboard type of features, it's important to consider both of those. Um, we can't just design for one or the other.
Yeah. I think you've moved the product along in a lot of directions based on feedback that's come from the field, right? Kind of the approach has been put out a really good product to start with, but hold back a little bit and see what enhancements the customers really want before you go and put something in. There's very few companies that have been successful with pushing their ideas of what the customer wants and having them stick. And I think it's important that under your direction, we kind of look at feedback coming from the field. And as you mentioned, like we have the battery pack extender that allows the device to stay in the field for past 28 days, when originally we thought it was only going to be used for about 5 to 7 days. So that was an enhancement that came from the field. Our cylinder sensor kit is something that came from feedback, right? Because while we were putting our sensors in situ, there are many situations where the customer wanted to have it in a cylinder because maybe they couldn't put it inside the structure very well. Overlays are a good example. We need about 4 inches of concrete over our sensor, but an overlay on a bridge, let's say, may only be 3 inches thick and not enough
Mm-hmm.
to put a sensor in there. So by putting the concrete into a cylinder sensor kit where our sensor is mounted in the bottom of a cylinder, dump concrete on it, it's mobile. It could be moved to a lab. It can be moved to the side of the structure. Gives you a lot more versatility. And it could also be very useful to do lab work for experimenting with different types of mix designs. And then there's a whole host of advancements you've put into the dashboard since its inception, right? What were some of the latest innovations you put into the dashboard?
Oh, one of the most recent popular ones I'd say would have to be as when we were talking about battery life is displaying the battery of our data logger on there,
Oh, that's right.
and the status. Has it been covered with concrete? Hasn't it been? So that's been a a key update, very positively received. I'd say also we've changed a little bit on our plotting technique to show days and hours rather than dates and times, and that allows you, as you're comparing, how have I done at my 1, 3, 7, 14 day, 28 day. It's a lot easier to look down at the x-axis and say, where am I at on my chart? And before, we considered date times, which was nice, but we really feel that we've met some more needs with showing an hours and days type of charting technique. So I think those are two of the big ones we've done recently. They've been pretty positively received.
Yeah, great, great. Nicely done. Well, let's switch over to kind of lessons we've learned from other industries. The automotive and electric metering had embraced predictive analytics. Do you see similar opportunities in precast and field concrete placement?
Oh, absolutely. I love the potential here in this particular context. Um, So we have right strength measurements, and that leads to our plot on the dashboard and live strength that tells you what is the current situation at your job site. But we really feel that with some machine learning and once we gather a lot of data, we can really offer you in the future a look at, okay, based on typical projects and typical mixes, we see that you're probably going to be in this strength range at this time. So it really kind of gives you an idea to plan ahead. Hey, I think I should be able to start scheduling these resources to be moved from this project around that time. Um, so I love that type of predictive component that we're looking to give to our customers in the future. Really putting some thought into that right now. Additionally, I think taking with some of our temperature measurements on site, maybe getting some weather data as well, we could start offering some opportunities that maybe, hey, we say a little warning on the dashboard. Maybe these conditions are conducive to plastic shrinkage cracks. Hey, watch out. Some types of these things that um, you can just keep in mind as you start your project on the day. But that's just cracking the potential. I think we have lots of other opportunities to look as we gather more data and we have a lot more customers telling us things they're interested in. But yeah, those other industries you mentioned, the electric and automotive, absolutely. They can start taking diagnostics, and there's been publicized documents saying, hey, we're monitoring this voltage in your house. It's, something looks like it's going wrong. Here's a little warning. So I think there's potential for us as well, especially we talked earlier about maybe we have customers uh, plug sensors or plug data loggers back into sensors in the future and take a few measurements, and maybe we can say, hey, something's looking a little bit off here. So lots of potential, not there yet, but we're definitely exploring those opportunities and really kind of brainstorming what we can offer with the infrastructure that we've developed now. So
Yeah, yeah, that's really some cool insights. Our product that you helped develop not only has our sensor in it for determining the strength using um, wave sonics for looking at the resonant frequency to ultimately convert to compress the strength, but we also have a temperature probe both in the sensor, so that's embedded in the structure, and then we have a temperature probe in the data logger, which is outside the structure. So we're getting, and not only are we getting, but we're displaying the temperature readings both inside and outside. So environmental temperature and structure temperature. And with our GPS chip in the device as well, we can know where the location is. And so you were referring to the potential when you know location, temperature, you can tie right into the data services of the weather agencies and determine what's going to be happening and start to give warnings. Um, Evaporation rates based on the temperature, the wind speed. Should somebody cover their product, might lead it to cracking. Should they
yeah.
warm? Should they cool it? Right. So those are all sorts of cool features that you are thinking about, right, in
hmm
and enhancing in the future. Um, so that's cool. So I,
Yeah,
I think
really excited about the opportunities there. I think there's lots we could do with that.
yeah. So yeah, nothing like dreaming and seeing ways that we can enhance things. And again, these a lot of times ideas are coming from our customers. They've asked for like a quick release for the data logger when it's hooked up, and we're implementing those. So as fast as we can get ideas, we try and implement them quickly. We're a small, nimble company, but that gives us the ability to turn very, very quickly. And not be a big company that may be like the Titanic and take a long term to turn and make a decision.
For
Um,
sure, yeah.
so, I mean, talking about that decision making, it really comes down to a lot of your personal leadership skills. Um, you've led teams through rapid technology changes, certainly Wavelogix as a startup. How do you encourage innovation in our industry, and like ours? And are you cautious about adopting new technology? What's your thoughts there?
Oh, good question. So as far as so the question, just so I'm clear, how do you encourage innovation? Is that kind of the root of the question there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Um, well, I think in my humble opinion, I think finding a place where there's frustration in the industry, right? What are some of the bottlenecks? What are some of the challenging issues that a customer or industry faces? And then trying to offer something that solves that problem, makes it simpler, may even reduce the cost as well, is a great way to jumpstart innovation in an industry and get early adoption. That said, um, certain industries can be a little cautious there. Like, hey, we've got our method. Maybe it's not perfect, but we know what we're doing. There's a lot of, domain knowledge, maybe people in the industry 20 or 30 years, right? So how do you then get a customer to give you a shot, right? So I think there it's important to get a product and a customer to do a trial, right? Do some pilots, get some early partners, especially some people who might talk amongst their industry friends, right? So you got to get it out there. You got to get some people willing to work with you, give feedback. That's really important, right? You have an idea of how you think the customer wants to use it, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to be a little bit off on that. You're going to need some guidance from people who actually use it, who use it in the field and know what they're doing. So I think, in my opinion, the early adoption is, again, to summarize, finding that bottleneck, finding that pain point, and then offering something and listening to the feedback. And I think those are 2 or 3 points that are really important in getting uh, innovation going in an industry.
Yeah. That's great. Good insights there. And you do a lot of pre-testing before something goes out. I think you're also using AI tools to simulate large scale volumes. I mean, can you talk a little bit about how you use some of the tools today to guarantee the product is the best it can be before it goes out into the field?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I'm a big believer in test automation. So some of the not to get too buzzword like, but some of the main drivers of modern software development are around what's called like a continuous integration and continuous development practice. So what does that mean? That means every time you're making a code change, that triggers various things. It triggers an analysis of the code by modern tool chains. It triggers some automated testing that may include the product. Maybe it's just more of on a piece of logic by piece of logic, right? But I'm very big on actually hardware in the loop testing is another phrase where you actually have automation in place. It includes the product and it runs a suite of tests every time you touch the code and make a change. And so that's something I'm a big believer in. We've implemented at Wavelogix on multiple domains, whether it's the website, whether it's their data logger, whether it's some of our practices in machine learning. We've implemented a lot of automated testing, and I'm pretty happy with where we're at there. It's definitely a modern approach to design and development of software. So pretty happy with that.
Great. Well, folks, there you have it, the mind of Gerry Van Horn. We're really very lucky to have you on board, Gerry. Certainly
Thank you.
driving a heck of a product. Um, None of us are really from the construction industry, but we can't tell our customers how to build something, but we can certainly tell them how strong it is once they built it, right?
For sure.
So thanks again for joining us today, Gerry. Those are
It's
great
been a pleasure.
insights. Sue, why don't we open it up to questions and then we'll wrap it up for this session.
I think we've covered a couple of these, but as Joe called us, a small, nimble team. And I'd say the majority of everybody comes from different industries and to unite on this task. And what are the skills that you feel transcend the industries that you've worked with that make you a really strong leader in our company? I've heard you know, um, getting early adopters, and I've heard test automation. But are there any other innate skills that you have that you feel really transcend the different industries you've worked in and are coming together here?
Great question. I think two popped into my mind. The first is being a curious individual, right? So I've worked with people before that come in. This is going to be a bit of a cliche. They clock in, they do their work for 8 hours or so, they clock out, and they don't care about the rest of it, right? That they leave. I'm not saying the goal to a successful person in their industry is working 12 hours a day. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is having a curiosity about your new industry, your new domain. How can you become a subject matter expert in that as soon as you can when you switch industries? I think that's very important. Kind of tangential, but similar to that is being a self-starter. So I worked with some people before that they're going to need a lot of handholding and direction to do things. And I think it's important that you give it a shot. Don't ever suffer in silence for a long time, right? If you don't know something, you got to ask. But I think it's important to have some self-starter mentality and really kind of go after it and give it your best shot. So I think those type of skills, curiosity and self-starting, really are key attributes whenever you start a new industry or a new project in general.
That's great insight, and I think a key takeaway for the majority of our listeners today. So thank you very, very much for being here today and sharing your insights. I'd call that a wrap, and a huge thank you to Gerry and Joe for taking time to share your experience and insights. It's always amazing to hear directly from someone who's driving innovation on the front lines. And of course, thank you all for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the conversation with Gerry and took away some valuable insights. Keep an eye on your inbox. We'll be sending out the recording and slides shortly. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you again on Thursday, August 14th. And we'll surprise you with our new guest. Take care.
Thanks,
See you
everyone.
next month.
Thank you.